and it's gone on, and we won't be silent anymore. Would you feel that? I want to hear that again. And we won't be silent anymore. Somebody's hurting our family, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. I tell you, it's gone on far too long. Somebody's hurting our family, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Somebody's poisoning the water, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. I tell you, it's gone on far too long. Somebody's poisoning the water, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Ooh, I know y'all got hands full of silence, but I know you still got stomping feet. Might as well start warming them up. We're going to be getting into step in this march, right? So, all right. Somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on far too long. And it's gone far too long. I tell you, it's gone far too long.
Kind of a
and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. I tell you, it's gone on far too long. Somebody's hurting Ohio, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore.
That one says live for me. I'll try to drop it.
All right, well, we got those feet moving. Yeah, feeling good. Well, we got those feet moving. We're going to learn another song. I can tell that y'all are picking it up and getting into the rhythm quick. So we talk about marching together. We know that we got to get in step. We know that it's not about one person leading the way. It's not about one person leading the way and everyone else following behind. We get in step with each other. So this song will say, we're getting into step. Clap, clap. We're getting into step. Clap, clap. We're getting into step to win our freedom. So let's try that. We're getting into step. We're getting into step. We're getting into step to win our freedom. Too many years we've been divided. Now's the time to unify. We're getting into step to win our freedom. So let's try that. Too many years we've been divided. Now's the time to unify. We're getting into step to win our freedom. Okay. We're getting into step. We're getting into step. We're getting into step to win our freedom. Too many years we've been divided. Now's the time to unify. We're getting into step to win our freedom. Yeah. We're getting into step. We're getting into step. We're getting into step to win our freedom. Too many years we've been divided. Now's the time to unify. We're getting into step to win our freedom. I can't hear y'all. You're singing it. I need to sing a little bit louder with my own voice. So let's do that again. We're getting into step. We're getting into step. We're getting into step to win our freedom. Too many years we've been divided. Now's the time to unify. We're getting into step to win our freedom. Yeah, we're getting into step. Okay, getting into step. That's right. We're getting into step to win our freedom. Too many years we've been divided. Now's the time to unify. We're getting into step to win our freedom. Yeah, that one feels good. We're going to use that when we're marching, all right? You're going to remember that one. Let's go ahead and keep learning, keep growing and leading. This next one will be a call and response. And this is to remind Cleveland and all of Ohio and all the Midwest and all this nation that just in case they didn't see it on our signs or see it in our faces, we'll tell them who we are. Everywhere we go, people want to know, who we are, so we tell them, we are the people, the mighty poor people, Ooh, ah, ooh, I said, ooh, ah, everywhere we go, people want to know, who we are, so we tell them, we are the people, the mighty poor people, Ooh, ah, I said it, ooh, ah. Calling all the people, uniting poor people, all of the people, racism is evil, poverty is evil, war machines are evil, ecological devastation is evil. Everywhere we go, people want to know, who we are, so we tell them, we are the people, the mighty poor people. Ooh, ah, we said out. Yeah, give yourselves a round of applause.
Greetings. How's everyone doing? My name is Reverend Dr. Theoharis. I'm the co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, and it is powerful to be here in Ohio. Thank you to the Ohio Poor People's Campaign. Thank you to the Kentucky Poor People's Campaign, who is here in the streets in the house. The West Virginia Poor People's Campaign that's here in the streets in the house. The Indiana Poor People's Campaign that's in the streets and in the house. And folks from all over the country are watching us. We're getting ready. Oh, in Michigan. And the Michigan Poor People's Campaign that is in the house. Let's hear it. Oh, we got Pennsylvania. Let's hear it from Pennsylvania. Here we are nationalizing these state-based movements. So we're just going to do some singing and some chanting, but before we do more of that, I'm going to turn it over for a few announcements for when we get ready to march. We're going to first get fired up, we're going to get grounded, and then at some point we're going to get ready to march until we have some announcements before that happens.
Thank you, Reverend Liz. Hi, everyone. I'm Chrissy Stormaker Martinez. Welcome to my home in Cleveland. Welcome to the Great Lakes. Welcome to Appalachia. Welcome to the Rust Belt. I am part of the Marshal and Security team. If you see someone with a yellow vest on, they're just trying to make sure that people get the assistance that they need. So please listen to them and be kind. And we promise we'll be kind back. We also have some folks who are here who are street medics. They're marked with a red cross on their hat or their backpack. They're gonna wave right here. There's some of them waving. Hey, we love you, street medics, Northeast Ohio Medic Collective. All of these people are here to make sure that we all get people where they need to be safely. So to that end, we want to make sure that people with mobility issues are actually prioritized, that we make sure that we're pacing the march to them. So folks with mobility issues, will you please come join us at the front of the march? And if possible, we would like to make with you. That would be really, really wonderful, and that would make my heart really happy and warm. Thank you so much for coming to Cleveland, and thank you, Reverend Liz.
All right. And I think we're going to have Brian, one of the Tri-Chairs of Ohio, also just kind of welcome us here. So let's give it up for Brian.
Hey, Cleveland, can I hear ya? Are you here? All right, Poor People's Campaign. Thank you all for being here. We need your help. We are one of those cities. We are with you in solidarity because your fight is our fight. Your fight is our fight here in Ohio. We want everybody in this state to know we are organizing poor folks from the hood to the hollers. And that's why we're here, and that's why we're going to be in D.C. on the 18th, all right? So can I hear one more time, Cleveland? Bark if you're with me.
All right, so we're going to do a little bit of chanting and singing. And I'm looking for some of our theomusicologists to come join us to help lead with that. But I'll start with a chant so that we get ready to march, because we want to make sure that our demands are clear as we're making this march. And so right now we are experiencing one of the biggest attacks on voting rights, attacks on our democracy, attacks on our health care and our wages. And so I'm going to say, what do we want? And you are going to say voting rights. And I'm going to say, when do we want it? And you're going to say now. And then we're going to move to health care. We're going to lose living wages. And you get the drill. So what do we want? Voting rights. When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? Voting rights. When do we want them? What do we want? Voting rights. When do we want it? Healthcare. What do we want? Healthcare. When do we want it? What do we want? Healthcare. When do we want it? What do we want? Healthcare. When do we want it? What do we want? Healthcare. When do we want it? Living wages. What do we want? Living wages. When do we want them? What do we want? Living wages. When do we want them? What do we want? Living wages. When do we want them? What do we want? Living wages. When do we want them? Justice. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? What do we want? Justice. When do we want it?
I was going to tell her, keep on going. Ohio! Kentucky! Indiana! Michigan! I got a question for y'all. Is it past time for a mass poor people's low-wage workers assembly and moral march on Washington and to the polls? Is the time right now? I want to introduce you all to Reverend Dr. Alvin O'Neill Jackson. Come up here, Reverend Jackson, who is our executive director of a team that's mobilizing all over the country. Give him a hand. Give us some love for Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis. We're the Tri-Chairs from Ohio. Come on over here, Tri-Chairs from Ohio. Brian, all of them. Now listen, here's the deal. And we're going to walk, and I need to borrow somebody's legs today. I've been having some trouble with this ankylosing battle, so I want to borrow somebody's legs today that'll walk the march for me. It's not that. Can I borrow your legs? Yes. Okay, great. But here's the deal, nutshell. There are over 4 million people, poor and low wealth people, in Ohio alone. So many million of them are black, 2.4 million of them are white, hundreds of thousands, and West Virginia's here, by the way. We're going to be doing, I'm getting with West Virginia because we're going to do a march in West Virginia on the 4th and the 5th and the 6th. We'll talk about that later. Why are we on Euclid, which is kind of the main street in Cleveland? I'm going to say it like I feel it. We are not going to allow the issue of poverty and low wealth to be on back street anymore. That's the deal. That's why we're doing 12 mobilization tours. We started in the Deep South. We're going here. We're going to Pennsylvania. We're going to California. We're bringing states together, mobilizing, letting people know about June 18th, because we are damn tired of poverty being last in the public discussion. We can no longer be last. You cannot have 43% of the people in a country, poor and low wealth, in a country with a $21 trillion gross domestic product.
That's right.
And they're getting ready to pass a budget right now, $700 billion for the defense and $700 billion for everything else. That's ridiculous. And over 52% of our children. And during this COVID, billionaires made $2 trillion. And 8 million more people fell into poverty. It does not have to be this way. We are not going to be silent anymore. We're going to change the moral narrative of this country. It's time for a third Reconstruction. We know how to fix it. And we've got to make America see our pain. The heart of this country must be broken. The conscience must be shaken. And that's why they need to hear the pain. But then after we put the pain before them, they've got to hear the answers. We can't just curse the darkness. We must be the light. This is the season of Lent. And no better than us to do than to be calling this country to repentance. We're going to march today down to the church. And the Episcopal bishop said, I want you to come here to the cathedral, because we want you to know that religious bodies, and I know some folk here are not necessarily religious, but it's a miracle when you start getting denominational groups to start coming in the street. You need to understand what's going on. It means something's going on. And I'm a church bureaucrat, so I know, right? That's a huge thing. And so when we all get together, we want to march 2 by 2, 6 feet apart. We want to spread this line as far down Euclid as we can. Can y'all do that? Yeah. Don't bunch up. Where's Clinton? Clinton, don't bunch up. Huh? Clinton's going to lead us out. He's got the up front banner. We're going to go get in front of it, and then we're going down to the church. And let's say this way. Say, ain't. Ain't. Say, I know that's bad English. Say it, I know that's bad English. But it's good movement talk. Ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. Let's take the street. Let's take the street. And by the way, they said, well, y'all shouldn't march during rush hour. We said, yes, we should. We want some people to be made a little disturbed by what we're doing. We want to draw attention to where we're going. Am I right? Say, ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. Let's do this. Somebody take this mic from me.
Where's Julie? Yes, another person from Indiana. Yes.
Where are the chanters at? The chanters. How y'all doing? Thank you. Let's do this. Go over this. Hey, little one, baby.
There she go.
That's right,
there
baby.
You go. Hey,
You
sweetheart.
want to walk with me? Where's your mom? Come on, mom. Come on. Come on, mom. I'm going to put me and the mom and the baby up first. Which street to go down?
We're just going straight down this way.
Come on up here, little baby.
Okay, she's right here.
Yeah. Get on. Put me on here. Hold your banner up so you can see it. Hold it up so you can see it.
Yes, baby.
No, I'm going to get out of the way. Let the banner be right behind this line. Just put it 6 feet behind you. Hey, Clinton. Clinton. Bring it on up front. The banner, then we'll just get behind.
Yeah, there we go.
And then let everybody else be pulled out too. Who's getting up? Where the cops at? Reverend Yalla?
This is the bus lane.
Yeah, this is the bus lane here.
Okay, show me which one.
Only not in the bus lane. No,
We are along the
this way.
third lane.
This way.
Yes,
go
yes,
straight
yes,
up the
yes,
front
yes.
lane.
Yes, 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 yes. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live.
Slow down, boy.
Everybody right to live.
I'll happily shout, slow down up front.
Yeah.
Y'all keep
I'm
the
looking
pace
for
down
Julie
now.
Betker
Young lady,
so she can replace my
keep the
spot.
pace for me, slow. All right, take off. Slow. Stay right here till I move. Stay till I move, baby. Y'all keep on. Go ahead.
Now one step back.
All right, step off. No. Step back two. This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like.
Justice.
When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it? What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it? What do we want?
Y'all need to slow down.
When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it? If we don't get it,
Shut it down.
If we don't get it,
Shut it down.
If we don't get it,
Shut it down.
If we don't get it,
Baby, you got it?
If we
No.
don't get it, what do we want? Voting rights. When do we want them? What do we want? When do we want them? What do we want?
Spread it out. Two by two. 6 feet apart. 2 by 2. Let's go. 6 feet apart. 2 by 2. 6 feet apart. Keep on. That's all right, lady. Keep it apart. Keep it apart. There we go. This is what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
No more poverty. No more poverty. No more low wages. No more low wages. We want health care. We want health care. We want voting rights. We want voting rights. We want living wages. We want education. Everybody, sound your voice. Everybody, sound your voice. Everybody has a right to live. Let me hear you now. Everybody has a right to live. Everybody has a right to live. Everybody has a right to live. Everybody, everywhere, every kind, everybody, every race has a right to live. We stand together, forward, together, not one step back. Forward, together, not one step back. Forward, together, not one step back. Moral march on Washington. July 18th. Mass. Poor people. Low wage. Workers. June 18th. June 18th. Mass. Moral march on Washington, D.C. and the pole. Here we come. Here we come. No turning back. No turning back. Silence. No more. Silence. No more. Silence. No more. Here we come. Here we come. Here we come. Here we come. All right, all right. We are ready. We are ready. We're ready. Yes, we are. Here we come. Here we come. Here we come. Yes, we are. Stand for justice. Come on. Stand for justice. Stand for justice. Yes, we do. Stand for justice. Watch those cards. Stand for justice. Stand for justice. Yes, we do. Say it with me. Stand for justice. Stand for. Say it again. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Say it. We are coming. We are coming. We are coming. Yes, we are. We are coming. We are coming. We are coming. Yes, we are. We are fighting. We are fighting. We are fighting. Yes, we are. No more poverty. No more poverty. No more poverty on our watch. No more poverty. Say it. No more poverty. Say it. No more poverty on our watch. Say this one. No more silence. No more silence. Say it. No more silence. Say it. No more silence. Never again. No more silence. Say it. No more silence. Say it. No more silence. Never again. Say it again. Say it again. No more silence. No more silence. No more silence. Never again. No more silence. No more silence. No more silence. Never again. We are standing. We are standing. Say it now. We are standing. We are standing. Yes, we are. Say it again. We are standing. 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 Yes, we are. We are fighting. Say it again. Say it again. Yes, we are. We are fighting. We are fighting. We are fighting. Yes, we are. We want justice. We want justice. Say it again.
We want justice.
Say it again.
We want justice.
Yes, we are. We want justice. We want justice. Say it again. We want justice. Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
This is what democracy looks like.
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 This is what standing looks like.
This is what standing looks like.
This is what fighting looks like.
This is what fighting looks like.
This is what democracy 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 looks like.
Forward together. Forward together.
It just sounded like a motorcycle to me.
This mail truck. Somebody's delivering mail truck part.
Why do you there?
That's why.
Yes, it's gone on. I tell you it's gone on. Somebody's hurting our family, and it's gone on. And we won't be silent anymore. Somebody's tearing those tents down, and it's gone on. Won't be silent anymore. Somebody's hurting our children, and And we won't be silent anymore. Somebody's taking our healthcare, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on. I tell you, it's gone on. Somebody's taking our healthcare, and it's gone on. And we won't be silent anymore. Yeah. All right, we didn't learn this one earlier, so we're gonna do a call and response to start. So repeat after me. I went down to the rich man's house. And I took back what he stole from me.
I took back what he stole from me.
I took back my dignity.
I took back my dignity.
I took back my humanity.
I took back my humanity.
I went down to the rich man's house.
I went down to the rich man's house.
Took back what he stole from me.
And I took back what he stole from me.
And now he's under my feet.
Now he's under my feet.
Now I'll ask you where. I want you to tell me where. Sorry. Now he's under my feet. Where?
Where?
Where? Where?
Under my feet.
Ain't gonna let no system walk all over me. Now say that back.
Ain't let no system walk all over me.
All right, now we got the pieces.
I've never done this.
I went down
from this way.
I took back what he stole from me. I took back my dignity. I took back my humanity. And now he's under my feet. Where?
Under my feet.
Where?
Under my feet.
Where?
Under my feet.
Ain't gonna let no system walk all over me. Well, I went down to the rich man's house and I took back what he stole from me. I took back my dignity. I took back my humanity. And now he's under my feet.
Under my feet.
Where?
Under my feet.
Where?
Under my feet.
Let no system walk all over me. Went down to the center. I took back what he stole from me. I took back my dignity. I took back my humanity. And now I'm under my feet.
Under my feet.
Where?
Under my feet.
Where?
Under my feet.
Ain't gonna let no system walk all over me. I went down to the welfare office. I took back what they stole from me. I took back my dignity. I took back my humanity.
Under my feet.
Where?
Under my feet.
Where?
Under my feet.
Gonna let no system walk all over me. Well, I went down to the county jail and I took back what they stole from me. Took it back. I took back my dignity. I took back my humanity, and now it's under my feet. Where?
Under my feet.
Where?
Under my feet.
Where?
Under my feet.
Ain't gonna let no system walk all over me. Well, I went down to the rich man. close and now I took back what he stole from me. I took back my dignity. I took back my humanity. Where? Under my feet. Where? Under my feet. Ain't gonna let no sister walk all over me. Alright. You look around, you can tell what we're doing. We're getting into step. That's what I know, right? We're getting into step. We're getting into step. We're getting into step to win our freedom. Too many years we've been divided, now's the time to unify. We're getting into step to win our freedom. We're getting into step. We're getting into step. We're getting into step.
I mean, they are not loud at all. I'm like, who are these people? What do we want? Justice! When do we want it now? What do we want? Justice! When do we want it now? What do we want? Justice! When do we want it now? What do we want? Justice! When do we want it now? What do we want? Justice!
Don't let them come through. Don't let this car come through.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it?
God, let me have a heart attack.
What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it? Voting rights. What do we want?
Voting rights!
When do we want it? What do we want?
Voting rights!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Voting rights!
When do we want it?
Now!
Housing. What do we want?
Housing!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Housing!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Housing!
When do we want it?
Now!
If we don't get it, we don't get it.
Shut it down!
If we don't get it,
Shut it down!
if we don't get it,
Shut it down!
healthcare. What do we want?
Healthcare!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Healthcare!
When do we want it?
Now!
If we don't get it,
Healthcare!
if we don't get it, if we don't get it,
Shut it down! Healthcare! Now! Pastor Jackson.
Yes, sir. How you doing, sir?
Good, I'm good. You don't know me.
Okay. Yes, sir. I was looking at you and I said, I know
so much. Down the stick.
People's power is the solution. You can't stop the revolution. You can't stop the revolution.
Got my breath. I was talking to my friend who lives here in Cleveland. He's saying we should work together to organize a trip.
You should have won. I stayed up and watched it. It was like...
That's young balance.
Oh, fine.
Good to see you. How about you? Trying to make it.
Come on, Diego, get up off your shoulder.
Okay.
Keep on getting down there.
You want me to try to get in contact with you?
I'm what?
All right.
I have been. Aren't you Stephanie, right?
No, I know.
Yeah, right. Yep.
You good?
Hello, Ohio. Hello, Kentucky. Hello, Indiana. West Virginia. Michigan. And I heard somebody from Pennsylvania. Listen, we want everybody to stand up for a minute. This is a big rally. We didn't come to sit down. We came to stand up. All right? Say, here we come. That ain't loud enough. Say, here we come. Mass. Say, mass. Poor peoples. Low wage. Workers. Moral. March on Washington, D.C. and to the polls. Here we come. All right, put your hands together. You may be seated. We have some instructions because there are tens and tens of thousands of people online. Wave at them. Welcome, welcome them. Online. And we got some instructions we need to give. Pauline, you and the crew, I want y'all to light it up one more time after the instructions. You got it? Well, you got a mic. Now, this sister from New York, you New York, she's bad sister. I want you to take us to the street. You got it. Take us to, is that mic up loud enough?
Check, 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 check.
Somebody on the mic, bring it up a little bit more.
Let's bring this mic. Hey, Justice, jump in choir. Come on back if you will. You know why?
You got Justice jumping choir?
Yeah.
Where is they gonna come up in a second?
Yeah, would you like
Okay, wait. Let's do the announcement.
Got it.
If the dean is in here, not the dean, the person over, bring that mic up some. Clinton and Brother Rob, give them a big hand. And where's Dr. Liz? Dr. Liz, give Dr. Liz a big hand. Now give the person beside you a big hand. Come on, come on.
All right, everybody, just a few announcements. First of all, remember to tell the story of this campaign. Use hashtag Poor People's Campaign on all of your social media. If you are deaf or hard of hearing, we have an interpreter up here who is signing, and also we have some Spanish interpretation. You got some Spanish.
Si alguien está necesitando que les ayuden con el idioma de español, yo voy a estar sentada por allá y me pueden venir a localizar y yo les ayudo con eso. Yo tengo el equipo para que me puedan escuchar.
So yes, just jump in. We are a new, unsettling force in this nation's complacent life. We are here. We are powerful. We are here for liberation. Can I hear that? We are here for liberation. We are here for liberation. You got it. And we. And we have nothing to lose but our chains. We have nothing to lose but our chains. Are you with me? Here we go. Ready? Let's hear it. We are a new, unsettling force, and we are powerful, a new, unsettling force, and we're here, a new, unsettling force for liberation, and we have nothing to lose but our chains, and we have nothing to lose but our chains. We are a new, unsettling force, and we are powerful, a new, unsettling force, and we are here, a new, unsettling force
Now we got some people coming, and they're not really coming to welcome us. They're coming to say why it is that they are mobilizing for this mass poor people's low-wage workers assembly moral march on Washington. Say, and to the polls. Say, and to the polls. And so we want to first ask at this time, and I'm going to switch it around, is the Dean Owens of the Trinity Cathedral, because they opened up this beautiful cathedral and said that the Episcopal Church, Bishop Curry, has let us know, along with other religious denominations, the Episcopal Church is mobilizing across. Hey, give him a hand. Let's mobilize. And Dean said he's going to be here, so we want to ask him to come, and then Julie Berger and Brian Mallory and Colette Harrison. They are the tri-chairs. You know, all of our coordinating committees, we have tri-chairs. We have an impacted person, a moral religious leader, an advocate. Tri-chairs, because this is not about ego. It's about building a movement, right? It's about building a movement from the bottom up. And so the three of them are going to come, and they're going to talk about why they are mobilizing. That's their welcome, why they are mobilizing and why they're asking people all over the country to join us on when? June what? 18. Say it again. 18. June 18th. And then following them will be a video. We're asking everybody to take no more than 3 minutes, because we are pushing on live stream, and we want to make sure people stay on with us, right? Dean, come on, give it up for the Dean to open up the cathedral. God bless.
Thank you, Dr. Barber. Thank you, Dr. Theoharis, and welcome to each and every one of you. My name is B.J. Owens. I'm the Dean of Trinity Cathedral, and y'all make this cathedral look good. Welcome. Glad to have you here. I bring you the warm greetings of our congregation and our bishop, Mark Hollingsworth. Trinity is the oldest congregation in Cleveland, but so much has changed in this city. This sanctuary was built on the wealthiest street in America at the time. This is back 1907. But so much has changed. Now we're just a fraction of a mile away from some of the poorest streets in the country. What happened between then and now? Well, today we're gonna name it perfectly. Systemic racism and disinvestment, poverty, and unequal access to health care, they're all evident here today, every single day. This place, Trinity Cathedral, was built as a sacred place for all people. It was a gift to the city and a place for God to be worshiped and justice lifted up. As Episcopalians, and you all can pretend to be Episcopalians for just a minute while we're all here, we strive for justice and peace among all people, and we work for the dignity of every human being. And dignity is what get cast aside when we're forced to live with racism, crushing poverty, and the cult narrative of religious nationalism. We know it doesn't have to be this way, and so we welcome you and proudly join you in your call to all of us to be the moral nation that we have yet to be. Peace and justice begins in our homes, it begins in our churches, in our neighborhoods, and in our cities. We didn't get here by accident, and we're not going to get out of here by accident. So let's move with intention. Let's listen to these stories. Let's hold one another's stories as we move towards Washington, D.C. in June. And as we lend our voices to a movement to restore the soul of our nation. Welcome, and let's go.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Buckeye State. Welcome to the Fusion Movement in Cleveland, Ohio, with our brothers and sisters from Michigan, Indiana, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Kentucky. We come together today in person in community. At this mobilization stop on our way to Washington, D.C. on June 18th of 2022. We come together today against the injustices we see happening all around us. We come together today for all those lost from COVID. We come together today because we know that prosperity and justice go hand in hand, and our deadline is victory. Forward together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
Thank you all so much for coming.
I just want to introduce you because you never introduced
Oh,
us.
yeah.
I just want to say, and it's hard to follow my esteemed tri-chair. This is Julie Becker. I'm Brian Mallory. We're here on behalf of Colette Harrison, who's our other tri-chair, who could not make it due to health issues. And as the resident tri-chair, this is my hometown. I'm so proud. My heart is full to bursting to see all of you wonderful people to join us in this work, this good trouble. This is God's work. We are going to save our country.
That's right.
We are going to save our democracy, and we're going to make these folks listen to what we have to say. I love you all. Thank you for being here, Julie and Brian.
Thank you all.
Ohio! Now I want you all to look around. I found something out. You know, I was talking to the young people that did the March for Our Lives, and they had 12 people in a house, and they made that march go viral. Now look around. I want everybody that's got a Twitter account to pull your phone out that you tweet. I want you to take a picture right now and tweet it out. Let's make this go viral tonight. Come on, let's do it. Everybody that's got a, if you tweet Twitter anywhere, all your accounts, come on, just show the crowd, right? All in the back. I know you got an account. I know y'all got some phone. If you don't have a phone and you got a tin can, pull that out and straighten the string out and say, hey. Yeah, if you got a drum, play that. Let's make it go. That's right. Let's make it go viral. Tell them to join, and make sure you send them to poorpeoplescampaign.org so they can RSVP and that they can get a bus. We're going to talk about that all the way through. Now, coming up is a video. You know, we do videos because we are always trying in this movement to put a face. It's not enough to say there are 140 million poor, low-wealth people. We've got to break this nation's heart. They've got to, and the only way you're going to do it is to put a face on it and show the pain. And that's why tonight in all of our gatherings, and some people can't handle that, because in all of our gathering, impacted people lead and speak first. You know, some people have said to me, I don't want to come because I have to speak first. I said, well, then don't come. We love you, but that's not the way we roll. We believe the most moral voices in this country are not people speaking on behalf of folk, but people speaking themselves. As we head toward June 18th, it is about creating a stage to shift the moral narrative by shifting the narrative. So we want to give you a sample of that. And so right now we have a special video. It's the June 18th mobilizing. It's time for the rejected to lead a justice revival. crowd. This is the America they are afraid of.
The goal of the Poor People's Campaign was to help the poor confront the evils that create poverty.
But my father used to tell me, don't piss down my back and tell me it's right.
Every nation listens to our voices, no matter our race, citizenship, or how much money we have.
We are not lazy. We are exhausted from the endless cycle of poverty.
You need to stop suppressing and regressing and start addressing and resurrecting.
So stop messing with our right to vote. We need to make it easier to access the ballot. We need to make it easier to live with dignity and respect without struggling. We didn't take shortcuts when we marched, and we don't deserve to be shorted in this legislation.
That's right. My body is tired. My voice is shaky. And my mind is determined. We know that for democracy to work for us, it has to work for all of us. It has to include all of us.
So show me what democracy looks like.
The persistence, the strength, and the courage of this movement is what it's about.
For the sake of bringing change to all our communities.
I want the people to win. Take this opportunity in my hand. Change does not come from the top down. It comes from the bottom up.
And we recognize as people of faith, this is the work of the church, but it is not only the work of the church. Come back to Jesus. When we show up and show out, we walk our talk.
Together, we are strong. We can protect each other. Insurrections never win. Only resurrections win.
And history tells us what we have to do when states work to subvert democracy. We're not going to let them stop us from coming out, and this is our country, and I'm what America looks like.
The biggest gun they got called a ballot box.
We must rise up as a moral army.
We're creating an America where everyone counts. We must challenge every Democrat, every Southern Republican, every scientist independent, that you will not stand in the way of our right to vote. It's time for the agenda to lead a revival of justice in America.
Forward together! That was just one state. That was in Texas. Imagine that multiplied by all of us coming together. That was just one state. And as you saw some people now, they weren't candidates then because we don't allow politicians and elected officials to speak. But we did this walk. People said it couldn't be done from Austin to Georgetown to Austin. They said it couldn't happen. And the more people showed up, they said the most diverse gathering in the Texas State House ever. And that was the work. And I do want us to take a moment and, in your own way, because we welcome all faith traditions and people who are not necessarily people of religious faith, but who believe in the moral arc of the universe and that it bends toward justice. So whatever your space is, would you take a moment in that space and just pray for this gathering, pray for this effort, whatever way you meditate, just a second. And let us not be hypocrites tonight and be like too much of the nation that wants to get back to normal but doesn't want to mourn. Nearly 1 million people have died. How do you do that? How you have nearly 1 million people that died and you don't even take a week as a nation and just cry? Thousands of people dying in Ukraine, and Putin is wrong in so many ways, and there's no excuse. But geopolitics, ego, and oil are not just Putin's problem. This whole war economy keeps getting us in trouble. And then before ever COVID hit, 250,000 people dying every year from poverty. Take a moment in your own space and just meditate and ask blessings upon our moral work in this season of Lent for so many, and we head toward Passover for others and Ramadan for others. Shalom, assalamu alaikum, amen, and grace be to you. The moral arc of the universe might be long, but it bends towards justice. We come now to the most important part of any gathering we have in the Poor People's Campaign, and that's when impacted persons come to the mic and they say why they are mobilizing. Because we're not doing this for people, we're doing this with. We're all impacted. We all are negatively impacted by these 5 interlocking justices. Say systemic racism, systemic poverty, ecological devastation, slash the denial of health care, the war economy, and the false moral narrative of religious nationalism and white supremacy. Say these are interlocking injustices that require a moral fusion, intersectional response and movement. Now we're asking folk to come. Only reason we do that clock is because, as I said, we're on a time. At the end, we've got some things we need to say to the rest of the nation so that people are clear about why we're doing. But we ask Larry Rodriguez to come and then help me with this name. Rikaya Abdul, is that right? Oh, I got it right. Okay. And so you will come after Larry, and then Reverend Liz will come, and then Bishop Bernadette Jefferson will come. You're coming to tell your story. That's the clock right there. It's on honor system. When it says 0, we'd ask that you would kindly let the next person come up. Amen? Can y'all welcome them? And this is what we do. When people tell their pain, we don't clap in the Poor People's Campaign. Because I don't think you ought to clap at folks' pain. And we tell people up here, don't try to make it cute. We don't need that. The nation, we done made too much stuff cute. You know, I told folk, I'm not burying any more people in my church that don't have health care and stand up there and say God called them home. That's a lie. God didn't call them home. Government killed them. And at some place you got to tell that truth. So we don't need folk, like we had one time somebody came to a PPC and they said, well, you know, I barely make a living. I don't make a living wage, but it's all right. God got me. It ain't all right. And God don't agree with that. Because if you keep acting, Zora Neale Hurston said, if people hurt you and you smile about it, they will kill you and say you enjoyed it. Right? So, and what we do instead of clapping, we say, and we won't be silent anymore. At the end of somebody's testimony, we say, what? And we won't be silent anymore. Well, say it like you mean it. We won't be silent anymore.
Josiah Rodriguez. I'm here from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm part of the Poor People's Campaign, and I take pride of serving in this community. I am poor. Yeah, I have 2 jobs. I have Social Security. Government, you need to address the situation. You need to increase our minimum wage. You need to increase our Social Security checks. You need to give us better housing. You need to give us better public transportation services, better health care, better equality of life. We all deserve this. We all deserve this equality of life in this nation. This nation should not be living under poverty. This nation should be living at the par like the rest of the world is living, doing better. We can do better, and I thank you for this attention.
Yes, and we won't be silent. No hand clap, say this, and we won't be silent anymore. Thank you, Roger. Yes, sir, you did better than good, brother, and you're going to be there in D.C.
Oh, yes.
Yes, sir.
My name is Rukaya Zavrabdul Mutakalim, and I'm the CEO and founder of the Musketeer Association because my son, Suleiman, was mercilessly attacked on the streets in Cincinnati, and he was merely out there trying to help. When I lifted up the curtain after I laid my son to rest, because I met the young men who were led to do a heinous crime, I saw the horror and the moral fiber completely gone from our society because children had become the buffet that they have been eating off of, from sex trafficking to in their own homes being molested. And I cried. The young men, 14, 16-year-old, led by a 25-year-old to commit the crime that they committed against my son. When I saw them, they were babies, the 2 that were arrested. And I didn't say, why me? I didn't say, why my son? I said, what happened to those children? And if we are not saying that, what has happened to us is what I want to know. Because children are born with light in their eyes. 5 things: light in their eyes, joy in their voice, hope in their hearts, a curious mind, and always reaching up. And this is a gift from the Creator for you. How do these children start reaching down and hurting themselves and others by picking up all types of weapons? I needed to know. This society has given up its moral fiber for what? And this is why I'm standing here with the Poor People's Campaign right now to say, rise up, join with us, all spiritual people of this earth, because our children are dying on these streets and they are our future. All children are. Rise up, join up, come, stand right now, lock arms, because we need to stop this. All spiritual people of this earth are the only ones that can do this, and it is not your religion, it is not your politics, it is the spiritual connection we have with each other. We come from one single cell, and they are our babies dying on these streets.
That's right.
And I'm done with it. And I mean that with all my heart. That's why I started the Musketeer Association. So you step up.
That's right.
And you don't step back.
That's right.
You tell them now, stop your violence. Stop your racism. Stop your fascism. Stop.
Stop.
Say it. Stop. 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 And I stand with him. And I stand with you. And I will bring my musketeers, and we will stand in front of all of you to tell you one thing. It is one for all, and all for one.
That's right.
And if you hurt one of us, you hurt all of us.
All of us. That's right. Love you.
And no, we won't be silent anymore.
We won't be silent anymore.
Good evening. I'm Bishop Bernadette Jefferson from Flint, Michigan. And my story is, if we don't vote, we stand a chance of our democracy being taken over. We stand a chance of our children being misused, abused, and poisoned. My grandson, which was 8 in 2014, was a candidate to be an academic ambassador to go to Washington, D.C. to represent for his 4th grade class. 2015, he became a DEF student. He didn't go to Washington, D.C. as an ambassador in 2015 because his grades had dropped because he had been poisoned by lead in the water. The water was just a right for us to have. But because of the emergency manager that wanted to give us dictatorship and not democracy, it was taken away. The same people that said the EPA to stand up for our rights, to have clean, pure water, to stand up that our children not be poisoned, to stand up that our community not be poisoned, not to have Legionnaire's disease. And here it is in 2021. They wanted to put an asphalt plant right across the street from a housing complex that housed my grandchildren and my child, that has a wood burning plant across the street that has caused asthma to infiltrate that community. And now they want to put an asphalt plant to take and pollute the air to give them something to hinder their breathing. Freedom ain't freedom until we vote. June the 18th, come together.
And we won't be silent anymore. We won't be silent anymore.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ohio. Good evening, Michigan. Good evening, Kentucky. Good evening, Indiana. Good evening, West Virginia. And good evening, these United States. This evening, it's the anniversary of the death of Fannie Lou Hamer, who cried out, "Nobody is free until everybody is free." That's right. And so, with that in mind, this evening we gather to hear the pain of some of the 140 million people who are poor and low income in this, the richest country in human history. To demonstrate the power of these poor and impacted people banding together, demanding that this country must and can change for the better. We gather to call for a radical redistribution of political and economic power, a revolution of moral values, a third reconstruction, and to build power to enact all our demands. And mostly we gather to rise together at the Mass Poor People and Low-Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington and to the polls on June 18th. Because if ever there was a time to fight, it is now. Yes, now is the time for poor and low-income people to come forward with bold and visionary demands, to cry out, to sing out, to march on that something is wrong with a nation that has almost half of its people living in poverty. Something is wrong with a nation that allows for 52% of its kids to have their lives cut short by poverty and inequality. But there's some wisdom in the Bible. And I want to share a passage from 1 Corinthians with you this evening that speaks to who has the power, who holds the power, the key to enact change in our world. The Message translation reads from 1 Corinthians 1, "Isn't it obvious that God deliberately chose people that the culture overlooks and exploits and abuses, chose these nobodies to expose the hollow pretension of the somebodies?" Now, this is not how we're heard that society is supposed to work. We hear that politicians and business leaders and lawyers are supposed to save the world, that they're the ones that are supposed to come up with policies and plans to make society work. It's not the poor, the low-wage, the dispossessed, the homeless. It's not those who have lost their children to leaded water. And religious leaders are supposed to preach the good news of trickle down, of wealth and prosperity to the rich. And then they're supposed to preach that there's pie in the sky when we die. But we all in this church know that that's a lie. After all, the message of the gospel and the message of our movement is that ending poverty, addressing racism, this is all possible.
All possible.
And that it's poor and low-income people who will show the way to whole societal transformation. We're in Cayuga County, where there's a deep history that has produced generations of abolitionists and women suffragists and labor organizers and all forms of freedom fighters. We know this from them, but we know this from our own lives today.
That's right.
I want to share my favorite quote from Reverend Dr. King, who talks about the power of poor people changing this society. He says, "The dispossessed of this nation live in a cruelly unjust society. They must organize against the structures through which society is refusing to take means which have been called for and which are at hand to lift the load of poverty. There are millions of poor people in this country who have very little, even nothing to lose. If they can be helped to take action together, they will do so with a freedom and a power that will be a new and unsettling force in our complacent national life." Today, more than 50 years later, we live in a time when there is great suffering, a cruelly unjust society. Much of what's going on doesn't make sense. How is it that we throw away more food than it takes to feed every person, not just in this country, but across the world, and yet people are going to bed hungry? How is it that here in Cleveland, we can have the high rates of poverty right here next to Millionaire Mile? Or the highest infant mortality rates in the shadows of one of the best medical facilities in the entire world? How is it that we can have huge numbers incarcerated and then millions of dollars from ARPA going to build prisons rather than invest in the people? In this region, where people are experiencing low wages, pollution of the air and water and land, where too many young people are having to join the military draft and go to fight a rich person's war, where families suffer the lack of medical care, we here and in this movement must be committed to uniting those nobodies, to being that new and unsettling force, to building a moral fusion movement and organizing and mobilizing and engaging and registering people to show up for a mass poor people and low-wage workers' assembly and moral march on Washington. We must build the power to declare everybody in, nobody out. We must make it a reality because we know it's true, that when we lift from the bottom, everybody rises. Because as we know, and as we sing in this movement, somebody's been hurting our people.
That's it.
It's gone on for far too long, and we won't
be
silent anymore.
Won't be silent anymore. Won't be. That's right. Be silent anymore. Take a listen now all over the nation in this place of the pain in the nation, but also the power. The truth is that we have 140 million poor, low-wealth people in this country. 42% of our children, 43% of our people, 52% of our children, and 8 million more people fell into poverty while billionaires made $2 trillion. That's the pain. But it is also true for some strange reason now. Poor people now make up 33% of the electorate and 45% of the electorate in states where the margin of victory is less than 3%. Poor and low-wealth people now are the stones that the builders rejected that can be the cornerstone to a new reality. Yes. But you got to see the pain in order to organize and mobilize the power. Let's take a look.
We must be honest about the foundations of the political and economic systems we call America. I love America because of her potential, but I know that America will never even get close to being a more perfect nation until we are honest about the politics of rejection. I want to tell you about some of the leaders who are building the Poor People's Campaign. Callie from Selma, Alabama, who had to bury her daughter, Venus, because she didn't have health care. I'm here today to share my daughter Venus's story. Venus discovered a small lump in her breast and she wasn't insured. Venus had to be approved for every prescription and every piece of medical that she needed. I'm standing here today in solidarity with the Poor People's Campaign. Because no one should have to bury their child in there because they don't have health insurance. I'm 46 years old. I've lived in poverty here in West Virginia every day of my life. And I work. I ended up recording a bachelor's degree. I'm doing the best I can with what I have. I'm a second-generation fast food worker, and I've experienced the cycle of poverty firsthand. Growing up, I watched my mother do long hours of back-breaking labor, doing everything she could to feed me and my sisters. My employer barely pays me enough to pay rent and utilities, let alone the medical expenses with my money. I worked 41 years in the coal mines. I have black lung, and it's just unfathomable what these poor coal miners have to go through in order to get what they have worked for and deserve. I'm a Vietnam veteran. My only chance of going to college was joining the army. It was one thing to know that you didn't have water and you couldn't afford your water. It's a whole other to find out that they shut off your entire community and none of you matter. But when I lost my housing, health care, and income all at the same time, I was terrified, panicked. Now I'm also a Kansas farmer's wife. Kansas farmers are committing suicide at a far greater rate than the national average. Hi, my name is Peggy Rich. I'm from Alabama, Alabama, and I live in Mobile with my 2 kids. And I got more sewage out there, no matter how. This is the largest encampment in Aberdeen. There's about 1,000 people in town, 16,000 who are homeless. And I'm 50, we also have the day because none of us live where I live.
That's all. And right now we out in the West. Right here.
When there are 38 million poor children and 60% of African Americans are poor, when 65% of Latinx are poor, when 40% of Asians are poor, when there are 67 million poor white people, we must say, this is not right. And together we will proclaim liberty throughout the land, for the enslaved, for the poor, and for us all. Calling that breaking news in Albany, where a large group of protesters have moved into the street. Washington Avenue between City Hall and March closed down. Protesters with the Poor People's Campaign of Indiana.
2 o'clock on the East Coast, 2 o'clock in the middle, 2 o'clock on the West Coast. Away from the stories tell us it's never happened.
Our communities, Muslim communities, who have joined the Poor People's Campaign to count on us.
Our democracy is in trouble. And we come to demand.
I cannot stand here and claim to be a follower of Jesus Christ and be silent about the moral outrage that is going on in our country.
Children are protected, and civil rights and labor rights and human rights are never
video, you saw the great-great-grandson of Robert E. Lee standing with people in Texas and people like Callie Greer. That's the power. But you can't go past the pain. You also saw our dear sister who talked about having sewage in her yard, Pamela. She was the first to die from COVID because the governor there would not protect the people. She's poor, she died, and as she was laying dying, she sent word to us to say, promise me that you all are not going to quit. Promise me that, because this makes no sense. And after she died, a study came out that said 60% of the people that died from COVID didn't have to die. If we had had a different kind of response, particularly from the bottom up. And on April 3rd at the National Press Club, we will be releasing a earth-shaking report. I can't even say it right now because we are still footnoting it. But economists and public health officials are getting together, and it's going to tell the story of COVID from the perspective of the poor. And do you know what we found out already? That the one stat they've been hiding and not keeping is the stat on how this disease and the response to it hurt the poor and low wealth. Because there is a fear of that unsettling force. It ain't all Democrat, it ain't all Republican either. There's a fear from the oligarchy, a fear from the aristocracy. Always has been. Even in 1965, when Dr. King spoke at the end of the Selma to Montgomery March, he said that voter suppression and racism were stratagems to keep the masses of poor Negroes and the masses of poor white folk from coming together to form a political bloc that could fundamentally shift the economic architecture of the nation. We must do this together. We have no choice to do it together. I actually believe that the insurrection happened on January the 6th. That's Epiphany in the Christian tradition. Epiphany, Bishop, is deemed as time when you're supposed to see better than you've ever seen. And I actually believe that most of those people, according to the data, were upper class folk poisoned by the ugliness and the insanity of racism and white supremacy and not just Trumpism, but the vestiges of the Southern strategy. But maybe the epiphany is America needs to wake up and say that if those folk would act out like that, what happens if poor and low wealth people ever lose hope? We can't let that happen. But we also must say to this country, you can't simply call people essential workers and think that's enough while you treat them like they're expendable. You call them essential workers but won't pay them a living wage. That actually will lead people quicker to despair. Or healthcare, because what it says is you'll rename me, but you won't change your ways. And so we have 3 more people that are coming to speak at this point, and we want them to come now. Excuse me. First of all, Terry Blanton from the Kentucky PPC to say why she's coming from her perspective as an impacted person. And then our dear Rabbi Enid Latter, who's coming to share why. And then Tim Watts is coming from the Indiana PPC. And then Reverend Dr. Rodney Hedgeman, senior pastor, Bethany Christian Church, and why she's gearing up. And then I'm going to come back and lay out the call in some very specific ways because we want people to know very exactly. We have a mantra in this movement. We are not going to be loud and wrong. If you're going to be loud, be right. And if you're going to curse the darkness, you have to have an answer to take people to the light. You can't just want to tear it up and not have something to offer in its place that reconstructs the nation in the way that it ought to be. So would you all come in that order? We did give leeway to our co-chair because she was setting the groundwork for some things. We'd ask everybody else to be mindful of the 2-minute time.
That be mindful of the time might just be for me because sometimes when I get started, I don't know when to stop. So my name is Terry Blanton. I'm from Harlan County, Kentucky. Thank you, sir. I say I'm not a college-educated woman, but I'm a self-educated woman, hillbilly from up the holler.
Ah, we love it.
You can educate yourself in many ways. So I've been an environmental activist most of my life, mostly out of necessity. And I wrote something here, which I usually don't do, but I was watching the breakdown of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and thinking about, oh my gosh, it's on us, and I know it's on us. So I feel like I have spent much of my days trying to connect the dots between destruction of my homeland with mining of coal that intensified during my lifetime, blowing up and destroying almost 2 million acres of a deciduous rainforest, the Appalachian Mountains, while also destroying the lives of the people, the water, the air, the soil. This has been happening in my lifetime for the past 50 years. You can't get a clean drink of water. And I was struggling in my community to fight this coal company that had moved in. I asked them to come clean up the road because my kids had to walk across coal muck to get on the school bus, and they told me it was something I had to learn to live with because I lived in a coal mining community. And I told them, excuse me, but this is a mountain community that's been impacted by coal. And when people say they come from the coal fields, I always correct them. It's like, no, we come from mountain communities impacted by coal.
That's right, that's right.
It's not the coal fields. You can't go along picking it up like this. They're blowing up our mountains and putting it into the waters. So this is, 2 million acres of some of the most diverse hardwood forests in the world gone forever. How that affects us with climate change. So for decades, I've been thinking, okay, how can we get all these people talking about climate change with what we're handling here on the ground when we're fighting for our kids to be able to get on the school bus without wading through coal muck. Mind you, my son will be 46 this week, so it's been a while. So I know that, is my time up?
Keep on, go ahead.
So I know that what has happened to me is now happening to everyone. The lack of clean water, the lack of clean air, the lack of, I hear of Flint, Michigan and the health issues, but if you look at the health impacts that's happened where mining coal is taking place, it's crazy. The mortality rate, the asthma, heart disease, the list goes on and on and on and on. And it isn't stopping. They say it's stopping. It isn't stopping. It's just nobody's watching right now.
That's right.
So right now, and so my fantasy
That's right.
has been, how can we get all of these people together? People fighting against social justice, people fighting against racism, people fighting for the environment. How can we get us all speaking with one voice? How do we do this? And I'm at you guys. I'm at you. So my challenge is, I've won awards from NRDC. I've won awards from the Sierra Club as their legal hero. I've won awards from the Rainforest Action Network. I sat on the National Environmental Justice Advisory Council. So I'm challenging all of those national organizations to stand with us June the 18th in Washington, D.C., because it's happening to us all. I'm calling, I'm challenging you. Be there with us, because it affects us all. Doesn't matter that I I don't know what else to say other than I challenge you. Be there. Be with us.
We won't be silent anymore. Did y'all hear her? She said, it's all connected. Now watch this. Bishop, come up here. You from Flint, right? Don't y'all understand if we get Flint, Michigan black woman standing with a white woman from the hills and the hollow of Kentucky, Lord have mercy.
We gonna make it work. We gonna make it work.
From the hood to the house. We won't be silent. From the hood to the house.
I have to tell you, I feel so humbled. My heart is so split wide open right now. I am speechless, and I'm so glad that I wrote this down. Dear God, in the opening chapters of the Bible, you teach that we humans are all reflections of your holiness, created B'Tselem Elohim in the image of the divine. Remind us, O God, that the image of the divine does not just look like the face we see in the mirror each morning. Help us all understand that the person sitting next to us, that the person standing next to us, that the person praying next to us, that the person working next to us is a reflection of your holiness as well, and that we are all responsible for each other. Help us all realize that being safe and strong as a community means not only taking care of ourselves, but also caring and doing something about the needs of all of us around, of all of those around us. Today, let us say, Hineni, we are here. We are here to stand together with the Poor People's Campaign. The challenges facing our country can feel exhausting, but the prophet Isaiah taught God never grows faint and weary. God gives strength to the weary, and we will not weary from answering the call. Hineni, we are here together. Hineni, we are here to fully address the interlocking injustices of systemic racism, poverty, and ecological devastation. Hineni, we are here to end mass incarceration. Hineni, we are here to defend voting rights. Hineni, we are here so that all have access to health care and child care and a good education. Hineni, we are here to change the narrative and build the power of those most impacted by these injustices. Hineni, we are here to help change the status quo with economic policies that can heal and transform our nation. Hineni biyachad, we are here together because we love this country and we are determined to actively engage in tikkun, in repair, to help bring about a world of wholeness and justice and compassion for all people in every city, in every state, across this nation, across our nation. And let us say, Amen.
We won't be silent anymore. Mother Tim.
And my name is Tim Watt. A lot of people call me Harry Hippie. I don't know why. And my name is Watt, not Watts.
Watt.
I've lived in Indiana all of my life. I worked in automotive components manufacturing for over 20 years. After my marriage dissolved, I suffered from severe anxiety and depression. I lost my last job, my last home, my health insurance, my self-respect, becoming one of the 20 million poor in the Midwest deindustrialized states. In 2013, I packed everything I could on my back and hitched to Indianapolis for homeless services for veterans. After several months of dealing with homeless services that only compounded my mental illnesses rather than alleviating them, I dropped out. I flew my sign in downtown Indianapolis 4 days a week and walked about town the other 3 days a week, giving a tithe of what I made to other local homeless, learning their stories. Most were good people falling on hard times. Their job of a decade or more just vanished with little or no notice. They couldn't afford COBRA insurance for their family's illnesses. They couldn't afford their car payments or their rent or their mortgage. They were one missed paycheck or one missed payment away from homelessness. Too many valid reasons to list here. I had no answers, but I had ways and means to raise awareness. I packed a shopping cart with everything I owned in it and spent a week in every one of Indiana's 92 counties, at least a week in every one of them, in full public view. And I met so many people just like me who've been marginally disenfranchised by the interlocking injustice of modern American society. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Don't be silent anymore. Be silent anymore.
I believe that the charge to us at this hour is given to us from the book of Micah. And there the question comes, what doth the Lord require of thee? But to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God. The charge to us at this hour is to go forth and to raise up the next generation. And this next generation is in need of us at this hour. It is not a time for us to be silent, but it is a time for us to do the necessary work. I am a pastor here in the city of Cleveland, and I pastor a congregation where we are working diligently to wrap our arms around 3 schools. And as we wrap our arms around those 3 schools, we have discovered it's not just the children in the schools that have need of us, it's also the staff in the schools. It's the families of the children who come to those schools. And so I say to us this day, I believe that the children are the future. And you remember the lyrics of that song. It comes to us from Whitney Houston. She said to us, teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give them a sense of pride. And I was struck by these words as I listened to those lyrics today, to make it easier. But as I stand before you today, we have not made it easier for the children. In fact, 1.5 million public school students are homeless. As I stand here today, half the children in the United States are poor or low income. Our children are disenfranchised in the schoolhouse, and during COVID, we discovered some were left behind because there was no internet, and others experienced the digital divide. Our problems are not new. Our problems are growing. They're unimaginable. Our problems are crippling us. They're persistent. They're structural. They're concentrated. They're unimaginable, and the narrative must be changed. And can I tell you, I believe that we have the power to change the narrative. The stakes are high, but this evening our loss is greater if we do nothing. Nothing is not an option. Can I tell you, the potential for our loss is greater than we can calculate. It is past time for us to get engaged in the struggle, past time for us to band together, past time for us to declare that justice and peace must come down like a mighty stream, past time for us to realize that we are all precious in His sight, red and yellow and black and white. Past time for us to quit blaming and stop pointing the finger. Past time for us to realize that we must have all hands on deck. Bishop, can I have just 30 seconds?
We need to hold on because of the impact.
All right.
We got a video.
All hands on deck.
All hands on deck.
All hands on deck.
Video. You only had 2? All right. He said he only had 2. We had one other video. But you know, it is past time. And one of the best places is most past time is in the pulpit. I'm a bishop, I'm a pastor, but I will tell you, we've had a lot of folk that preaching, but they ain't been in the street. So it's time for us now to put our feet where our mouths are. You can go, there's a study that was done a few weeks ago. It said they studied 50,000 sermons in American pulpits. And poverty did not even register as a topic of preaching, except on Martin Luther King Day and at special rallies like this. Most of the time, what's talked about in pulpits and synagogues and others is not what Jesus or the prophets put first. The second greatest sin in the Bible, second only to that of idolatry, is the mistreatment of the poor. What if every church and every synagogue would come to the street? Well, we're calling. I thank my dear sister for saying something. It's past time. It's past time. And now is the right time. I want to be clear tonight. Our framing for why we're doing this comes out of an ancient text that comes from the Hebrew text, the Old Testament text, but it's honored by Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, and others. It is Amos chapter 5, and in the Message Bible it says, injustice is epidemic, and people have begun to believe there is no justice. I didn't read this passage of scripture, Pastor Jackson, for a long time. I read, let justice roll down like waters, righteousness like a mighty stream. But the text actually says how you get that to happen. See, it doesn't just happen by saying it. God tells Amos in the fifth chapter, verse 16. Listen at it in the Message Bible. God says, I need a remnant that will go in the street and lament, cry, weep. I mean loudly, God says. And they will cry and say, not me, not us, not now. Empty the offices. I need some folk that will empty the offices, empty the stores, empty the factories, workplaces. I need everybody to join in a general lament of tears. And then God says, and when I hear you crying, when I hear you acting like there's a problem, not in your pulpit, not in your meeting at the Poor People's Campaign meeting, but in the street. When I hear you weeping and crying and saying, not us, not now, not on our watch, God says, then I'll come and help you. The Spirit says, I'm not going to help you until you act as though this ain't right. And you've got to do it in the public square. You can't do it. It's good to plan in the safety of this sanctuary, but you can't stay in the safety of this sanctuary. You've got to cry. And then justice will roll down like water. Let us be clear. And Pauline, I want you to get that piece. Why we assemble. Somebody say, why we assemble. Why we march. Why we're calling for a meeting on June 18th, 2022. Mass poor peoples, low-wage workers, assembly, and moral march on Washington. Just before our live stream goes off, I want folk to be clear that the puny terms of left versus right and liberal versus conservative and moderate are too weak to handle what we must address now. The real issue is right versus wrong. The truth is not to address systemic racism, systemic poverty, ecological devastation, denial of health care, the war economy, and the false moral narrative of religious nationalism is constitutionally inconsistent, it's morally indefensible, it's politically insensitive, and it's economically insane. Insane. And we're not going to address it by having a one-day issue. That's why Moral March on Washington and to the polls, the suggestion is way beyond. Because folk will actually watch you have a march, and that's all you do, and just keep on doing what they're doing. There's a place that we have to build deep. We've been 3 years building from the bottom. You don't just get folk from the holler to stand together with folk from Flint by just sending out an email. That's right. Or sending out a tweet. You got to go into those communities.
That's right.
And talk to people like they're human beings.
That's right.
And hear their stories.
That's right.
And invite them in to lead.
That's right.
We're saying to every one of our coordinating committees, as you're mobilized, you must mobilize among the communities. And this is not a paternalistic movement.
That's right.
This is not just you want to do something altruistic towards poor people. It's all of us.
That's right.
All of us. So we assemble and we march and we meet because the promise of our democracy requires that you can't separate these issues. Let me take systemic racism and show you what I mean. When we say systemic racism, we look at it through two lenses. There are a lot of lenses. We look at it through the lens of racist voter suppression, which doesn't just hurt black folk, it hurts all people. Do you know the current voter restrictions that they're putting in place would block 55 million Americans, not black people, 55 million Americans from having access to the polls in 2024 and 2022 that they had in 2020. 55 million Americans. Not black folk. This is not Jim Crow. And any group that's saying that and making voting rights the special interests of black people is wrong. Even in the Selma movement, they didn't make it the issue of black people alone. It was about democracy. Then we look at voter suppression through mass incarceration. Racism through mass incarceration. But we also look at it through the lens of what's happening to our indigenous and native community. You cannot claim to be a moral person and not be concerned with what's happening to First Nation people in America right now.
That's right.
If you're a black person and say you care about racism, but you don't give a damn about what's happening to native folk, you might as well hush up. That's immoral. That's schizophrenic morality. And then you can't care about racism and not care about immigrant injustice.
That's right.
Not just for Latinos, but for Haitians as well.
That's right.
I'm coming there. And not only that, you can't care about racism if you don't care about what's happening to our Asian community.
That's right.
That's why Frederick Douglass connected with the battle against Chinese oppression. Frederick Douglass. Right? And you can't care about racism if you don't talk about the collateral damage that racism does to white folk. And how, particularly in economics, the race is used to pit poor, low-wealth white people and black people against each other, when the truth is, when you can't pay your light bill and your lights go off, we all black in the dark. When your child can't eat, they don't cry black. They cry pain. So we assemble. We assemble in March because our politics are trapped in the lies of scarcity, which are fueled by what the Pope called the evils of trickle-down economics and neoliberalism. Trickle-down says all you got to do is come from the top down. Neoliberalism just lift the middle class. Both of them are magical, or lies. We assemble and we march because there were 140 million poor and low-wealth people in this country before the pandemic. There were 250,000 people dying a year from poverty before COVID ever hit. 700 people dying a day before COVID ever hit. We assemble in March because the pandemic has only revealed the deep fissures in our society. Nearly 1 million people have died from coronavirus, but most of them are poor and low wealth. Poor and low wealth people were the first to be forced to go to work. Because before the pandemic, they were called service workers. After the pandemic, suddenly they became essential workers. And we gave them a hand clap every night at 6 o'clock for what they had done. But we still kept paying waitresses $2.13 an hour, which meant most people who were in the restaurant couldn't even qualify for the COVID relief because they didn't make enough base pay. Somebody say, teach Barber. Yeah. And there's not a county in this country where a person making $7.25 an hour can afford a basic 2-bedroom apartment. No way. We haven't raised the minimum wage for 12 years, but we have raised the pay for Congress people. They've never seen a raise they've turned down or a tax cut they wouldn't pass or a military budget they wouldn't fund. That's why we must assemble in March. And we must assemble in March because we have a crisis of civilization and a crisis of democracy. And the whole country, the possibility of this democracy is at stake. And we assemble in March because this nation has spent $21 trillion on war and policing and surveillance. Think about that, $21 trillion. And we couldn't, and you claim you can't find 1.9 trillion over 10 years, which is just 190 billion for a little bit. The BBB was just a little bit. The Economic Policy Institute says we need $10 trillion, $1 trillion a year for 10 years just to get us back to pre-COVID. Not even to address all of the real issues. We assemble and march because poor people now make up a third of the electorate. We assemble and march because far too long poor people, people of color, indigenous nations, immigrant families, women, children, the disabled, and the LGBTQ community have been under attack. And what they have done is they pit us against us. I want to ask all of the folk that spoke to come stand with me. There's a rule we have in the Poor People's Campaign. We don't stand alone. That's right. I'm tired of folk playing people against one another. So they play the Muslim against the Jew and the Jew against the Muslim. And then they play the gay against the straight and the Latino against the black. And they make us fight in these silos. But the reality is the same folk that are denying health care are the same folk denying voting rights. And the same folk denying voting rights are the same people denying living wages. The same people denying living wages, the same people cutting public education. And the same people cutting public education are the same ones that are refusing to take care of the climate. And the same ones refusing to take care of the climate are also supporting the war economy, and the same ones supporting the war economy are getting most of their money from the United States Chamber of Commerce, and the United States Chamber of Commerce is backing every tax cut it can find, but then standing against living wages. And if they are cynical enough to be together, we better be smart enough to come together.
Yes, sir. We won't be silent anymore.
Come on up a little bit closer. Right here. There we go. Now, can I preach a little bit?
Yes, sir.
A few years ago, I stood before the nation and said we needed to be moral defibrillators. We needed to shock the heart of this nation. But when I look at now how in the middle of a pandemic, we still don't have the conscience to do what ought to be done when it comes to COVID relief and health care for all. This is the answer to these 14 points. Raising the wage, updating the poverty measure, housing for all, federal jobs program for all, protect voting and civil rights, guarantee high quality public education, immigrant reform, immigrant justice, immigrant rights, fair taxes, using the executive orders, redirecting the tax codes. When we look at all these things, and I don't know what Senator Turner, I was going to call her a minute, but God bless her, she had to step out. I'm convinced that we need a heart transplant. So I went to a friend of mine, Dr. Jackson, who's a heart specialist, who does transplants. And I said, tell me, how do you get to the decision to transplant a heart? And he said, well, first of all, Barber, we got to have a meeting. Before we ever transplant the heart, he said, we have to have a meeting. I said, you got to have a meeting? He said, yes. He said, we have to bring the best of every area, because the question is, how do you transplant the heart without killing the body? He said, we got to make sure that the heart transplant is necessary. So we have to do an extensive review in the meeting of the heart. We look at all the x-rays, all the paperwork. We look at all the enzymes. We look at everything. And when we decide to transplant the heart, it's not a 1 hour or 2 hour or 3 hour operation. It takes a long time, so we have to have a meeting. We have to have multiple surgeons, multiple anesthesiologists. There's got to be a meeting. It's not an easy decision, because you don't want to take the heart out and kill the body. He said, so every heart transplant takes everybody, takes the whole team. It takes a meeting. No one person can do it alone. No one group can do it alone. No one surgeon can do it alone. And when I left his office, I began to think that the same is true if you're going to change the heart of a nation. There has to be a meeting. And then the Holy Ghost got a hold of me and said, Barber, you didn't have to go to the doctor. You could have went to God. Because everywhere in the Bible there was fundamental change. It began with a meeting. In the first book of the Bible, God doesn't say let me, he says let us. There's a meeting that came together that created humanity as we know it. When they got ready to deal with Pharaoh, they had a meeting down at the Red Sea. They all came together and the sea opened up and Pharaoh drowned. When Goliath was running around saying what he was going to do, David had a meeting with 5 rocks. He got 1 for Goliath and 4 for the rest of his cousins. When Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thrown in the fiery furnace, they had a meeting. Down in the valley of dry bones in Ezekiel, the Bible said they had a meeting. And the bones came together and the Spirit blew on them. Jesus had a meeting one day with 5,000 and a few loaves of bread. When Jesus died on the cross, there was a meeting, because the Bible said the prophets that had been dead long ago, when he died, they got up. On Pentecost, there was a meeting. The wind began to blow and tongues of fire came and the word came that your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. But then I started reading the history. In 1852, after the Dred Scott decision, there was a meeting. The abolitionists came together and they said maybe this decision is just one link of the chain of events necessary for the whole downfall of the system of slavery. Therefore, what they have done has only emboldened and intensified our agitation. There was a meeting when Sojourner Truth and Lucretia Mott came together and they began to build the women's suffrage movement. And they joined at Seneca Falls. There was a meeting when the social gospel movement came together and they began to declare in the face of gross greed and industrialism that we could not turn away from the children. And they asked the question, what would Jesus do? In the 1920s, there was a meeting called the Bonus Marches. And folk came together to fight for fair wages, and that led to the New Deal. When black and white and Jewish civil rights lawyers had a meeting in the 1950s, and they decided to take down Jim Crow and to take down separate but equal. In Montgomery, they had a meeting. Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, they had a meeting. Then in Selma, they had a meeting. At the Greensboro, at the lunch counter, they had a meeting. In Birmingham, they had a meeting. Started with 40 people, but by the time it was over, thousands had been arrested and Bull Connor was brought down. Oh, yes, oh, yes, oh, yes. When Cesar Chavez was alive, they had a meeting in California. And the workers marched and they fasted. Right now at Oak Flats, the Apache Nation is having a meeting. And all of these meetings change the heart of the nation at that particular point. I just come by to declare that it's time on June 18th for us to have a meeting, for us to have a moral meeting, for us to have a meeting in the streets. Children got to be saved. It's time to have a meeting. Sick folk got to be healed. It's time to have a meeting. Low-wage workers got to be paid. It's time to have a meeting. Housing must be provided for all. It's time to have a meeting. The atmosphere must be saved. It's time to have a meeting. Indigenous people must be treated right. It's time to have a meeting. Voting rights must be expanded and protected. It's time to have a meeting. We're spending too much money trying to blow up the world rather than save the world. It's time to have a meeting. Too much religion is being used to push hate rather than love. It's time to have a meeting. We've got to change the heart of this nation. It's time to have a meeting. This nation needs a heart transplant. It's time to have a meeting. Are you all ready for the meeting? Are you ready for the meeting? Are you ready for the meeting? God said, if you will have a meeting, I'll show up. I'll bless you. I'll give you power. I'll strengthen you. I'll make you strong. I'll give you favor. I'll make you able to turn this country around. But first, you must have a meeting.
We're getting ready for a meeting, y'all. Y'all ready for a meeting? Y'all ready for the meeting? Y'all know when we're having the meeting? When? When? I want all of you, I want us to stand. I think we're getting close to the end here. You've got this pledge card. All of you have a pledge card, and we've assembled here tonight. I want you to fill this pledge card out and indicate that you're coming to the meeting, Washington, D.C., June 18, 2022, and that you are, then there's another box there for you to check that you're going to mobilize your community. You're going to reach out to folks in your faith community, in your neighborhood, in your family, with your social groups. You're going to reach out to them, and you're going to bring them and encourage them to sign up for the meeting. Everybody should have a card. And I think we ought to, maybe we're going to get ready to sing a little something, but I think we ought to bring those cards down here and just place them here. I want everybody tonight to place your card. We've got, you can go to www.poorpeoplescampaign.org, www.repairersbreach.org, www.kairos.center.org, but always www.poorpeoplescampaign.org, and all kinds of information. There are leaflets out on the desk there to tell you about the meeting June 18th in Washington, D.C. But we're saying that it's even as we come together that day, it's not just about that day. It's about a declaration of an ongoing moral committed movement to change the political narrative, build power, and pass policies that fully address poverty and low wealth from the bottom up. Say from the bottom up. Say from the bottom up. That's what we're doing. That's what this meeting is about, June 18th. So everybody here tonight, we're counting on you. You coming to the meeting, y'all? Y'all coming to the meeting June 18th? June 18th, 2022, Washington, D.C. I wonder if Paula, are you coming? You're prepared to sing? And we're going to sing, and we're going to just kind of come and place our cards here. This is an indication that we are coming to the meeting, but not only are we coming to the meeting, but we are committing ourselves to reaching out, bringing somebody else, encouraging others to come and join us at the meeting in Washington, D.C. We've got a wonderful bus ride share program. You can learn all about it on the website, rally.co. It's a bus riding share program where you can fill a bus, you can and share it with your friends and enjoy a ride to Washington, D.C. Oh, we got a basket. Yeah. And we're going to place our offering. So I want you to come up tonight as Paula leads us, and we're going to place our offering. This is our commitment. We're going to be at the meeting. 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 And we're going to bring others to the meeting. So let's make our way as Paula sings tonight and place your commitment card, your pledge card in the basket.
But right before we sing, I have two quick announcements. Those of you who live in Northeast Ohio or who are going to be here in Northeast Ohio tomorrow morning, we would love for you all to support the Ohio Poor People's Campaign and the Cuyahoga County Coalition to Stop the Inhumanity at the jail at the Injustice Center at 11 a.m. tomorrow. If you're in town, please join us at the Injustice Center at 11 a.m. tomorrow, because we need to tell our community members that it's not okay to spend $550 million on a new jail when we're the poorest city in the United States. In addition to that, thank you, yeah. In addition to that, we're having a teach-in on abolition and environmental justice this Saturday. It's virtual, you can pop in and out as you need to, but it's hosted by the Interreligious Task Force on Central America and the Social Justice Institute at Case Western Reserve. And we would love to have your presence and your wisdom. This is a popular education event, not just people speaking, but people speaking with each other. So you can register at teachin22.eventbrite.com. Thank you again so much for coming to visit us here in Cleveland.
Thank you. We're going to be there. We want to thank the Dean of the Cathedral again tonight for hosting us tonight. Thank you, sir. Thank all of you for being here tonight. Paula, come on and lead us in some music. And I want you to just kind of make your way as you get your card completed. Place it in the basket. This is your commitment. You're going to join us, the meeting, June 18th, Washington, D.C. Paula.
All right. Somebody's hurting our brother, our people, our children, and it's gone on far too long, and we won't be silent anymore. Here we go. Somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on. I tell you it's gone on. I tell you it's gone on. Oh, somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on. And we won't be silent anymore. Did you hear? Somebody's
and we